Hi, I'm Laura,
And I'm Joe.
and this is CrimeDivers.
Hello everybody, welcome to today's episode.
Hello everyone, welcome back.
So today we have a Laura-sode.
We do have a lot of sode.
So where in the world are we?
We're in the UK.
Okay. Oh, okay, UK, okay.
You're rhyming now.
So what's the name of your episode?
It's called Murder on the Roadside.
Oh, okay. So do you want to dive in?
Let's dive in. So Tracie Andrews was born on the 9th of April 1969 in the West Midlands. Tracie was brought up just outside Birmingham. She was a middle child with an older sibling and a younger sibling, and she had several half-siblings as well. Her parents broke up when she was around 6 years old because they had quite a volatile relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So her parents' separation, it actually did have a lasting effect on Tracie.
Right.
Her mother did get married again to another man, and you know, like they say that like you look at your parents' sort of relationships and you can, you know, form your own expectations of your own future relationships from that. I think, you know, sometimes people say that, you know, just say your parents had a good marriage, then you're more likely to have a good marriage. But if your parents split up or were abusive or whatever, that's sort of what you know, and you start to expect that. That's what you have an expectation of a relationship in.
Is that a thing?
Apparently, it can be. It can be. It's probably not a thing for everything.
Yeah.
But I think it's, you know, it's like, you know, because that's what you've been brought up to see, I suppose, in your life. So that's then what you think is normal, I guess, in some ways. So I think that, like I said, it had a lasting effect on Tracie. So Tracie left school in 1986, and aged 21 she had a baby daughter, but the relationship with her partner lasted barely a year. What became apparent was that Tracie didn't like her partners having a life that doesn't involve her.
Oh.
You know, she didn't like her partners going out without her. She was very jealous and possessive. So
Let's
like,
do everything together.
yeah, basically. So
How
again,
dare you have a life without me in it?
yeah, basically she couldn't hack it.
Right.
I don't think. Which again, I'm assuming must have been from maybe partly what she saw from her sort of mum, dad, and partners and stuff. You know, like she'd sort of seen that kind of thing and maybe thought, well, that's how it is. So everyone who knew her said that she had a temper as well.
Right.
And like when she lost her temper, you knew about it. So like, you know, she was one of those like you knew.
Went for it.
Yeah, totally. You know, she would shout at the top of her voice. The whole street would pretty much hear her.
Oh,
you know,
God.
she was.
Oh no, I hate when you have neighbours like that.
God, I know. I mean, my next door neighbour, bless her, she's actually quite a nice woman, but see when she goes mad at her kids, she like screeches like a strangled cat screeching. It's like, okay, she's angry.
Yeah, we used to have that when we lived in a flat because we had a couple and their child in the flat below us, and when she was angry, you could hear her, and I'm like, oh my God, and I could hear the child crying as well. I was like, oh my God, what?
I've never heard the kids crying out enough, but she can really like, but it's like just goes like really high pitched, like a high pitched kind of shout. So
I wonder if they can hear you.
probably. I mean, I've had a few.
Do you shout at your child like that?
I have probably.
Right, that's it. Phone in social services. She's coming to live with me.
Over.
Nah, actually, you're alright. She's alright, short doses.
Just tell me about it. Can I wait till the schools go back? So anyway, by 1994, Tracie, who was 24 at this point, was living in a council flat in Alchurch, working as a barmaid. She did have dreams of becoming a model though. You know, she was actually very photogenic. If you've seen pictures of her.
Well, the picture that I've seen of her is not a very
there's an
photogenic one.
unflattering picture of her as well, but there is actually a picture of her just like normal.
Right.
And you know, she had looks, I suppose you could say. She was.
No, I haven't seen, because like, you know, obviously I've kind of heard her name, so I kind of vaguely know what the case is. And whenever I've seen her, it's always been this one particular picture.
There's a very famous photo.
Yeah,
that you
that'll
see
be
of
the
her.
one.
Yeah,
and she looks absolutely horrendous in it.
In the documentary that I watched, obviously, it showed you pictures of her just normal, and
right.
I mean,
she was
pretty. Yeah, she seemed quite pretty. So as I say, she was very photogenic. She had like photos taken to put in like a sort of, you know, portfolio type thing, but it never took off. Like she never went anywhere with her modelling. It never happened for her. She did like the attention she received from punters in the pub. Living nearby to Tracie was a man called Harvey. He was 23, And he also had a daughter from a previous relationship as well. And he worked as a bus driver for West Midlands Travel, and he was a very outgoing guy, had a big interest in cars. So Lee and Tracie, they met in October 1994 in Ritzy's nightclub in Birmingham. They quickly became a couple, and their relationship also developed very quickly. They actually moved in together around 3 months into the relationship. So it was a very quick whirlwind type relationship. But, sadly their relationship was quite volatile. They were both quite jealous and possessive, so I think they kind of were a bit of bad as each other.
I was just going to say that. It sounds like they were as bad as each other.
Yeah. They would row and they would fight like cat and dog. Neighbours would say how they heard raised voices at all times of the day and night, and it would go on for hours and hours.
Oh, God.
And then it would stop, and then it would start again.
Oh, no.
Which...
That must be awful to live next to that.
Oh, God, I know. I would hate that, because, I quite like peace. I quite like quiet. So, it's bad enough when I hear my neighbours screeching away, but generally, my street's fairly quiet.
And you also have you not got a man that coughs in the shower?
Oh my God, yeah. Honestly, every day at the same time, I just hear him coughing at me. He obviously must have something that makes him cough.
Maybe the steam from the shower makes him
it does,
cough.
yeah, but it's every day. And I'm like, because this morning I was hanging out my washing before coming down here, and I could hear him coughing away, and I was like, really? In fact, it's not all day, but it's just irritating. It's at the same time.
I get irritated with noises. I do. I'm really bad for it. I hear dogs barking and
I just like total silence.
Yeah, people cutting their grass and stuff.
How dare people go and live their lives?
No way.
It's shocking.
How dare they?
But
We
to
need
be
people
fair,
live in the middle of nowhere.
I know, I would love that actually. But to be fair, I don't mind a wee bit. Things like that are normal, but I suppose if somebody was arguing all the time.
Yeah, that would be really stressful to.
And I think if you're living in a flat as well, obviously flats, they're more, you can hear more things because they're obviously...
tell me about it. I know we keep going off on one, but when we lived in a flat and we had a woman above us, and we knew if we'd been making too much noise the night before because she would put her Hoover on at 7 o'clock in the morning, because her bedroom was above ours. So if the Hoover started going at 7 o'clock in the morning, we were like, oh, we made too much noise last night.
Yeah, we pissed her off.
So yeah, you can hear everything in flats.
Oh, totally. So anyway, the relationship continued because after 6 months, they did get engaged.
All right, okay.
But, their volatile relationship would often see them break up, only to get back together again straight after. So it was never...
So it was a pretty, on, off.
Yeah, pretty much. So this went on for a period of about 2 years.
Oh, wow.
But the relationship finally came to a head on the 1st of December 1996. They had been rowing all day, as usual. But Lee, he tended to be like the peacekeeper. So he was the one that, tried to calm things down and sort of, stop the arguments. So, which makes me laugh a little bit, because he thought it was probably... it's thought that he suggested to go for a drink, which I thought, if you're having a big massive argument and you're all volatile...
And then you add alcohol to that situation, probably not a great idea.
I don't think that would solve the problem there, but apparently, obviously it was thought that he suggested that they go for a drink, so that's what they did.
Okay.
But sadly, Lee wouldn't make it home alive that night.
Right.
The only witness to what happened was Tracie Andrews. So, she gave a bit of a account of what was about to happen. So this is what happened.
What she says happened.
Yeah. So she said that they left the pub, Lee was driving. So I'm assuming he mustn't have been drinking.
Oh, yeah,
or I don't know if it was maybe back at... Because obviously this was... when was this?
It was in the 90s, was it?
Yeah, so maybe there was a... when you can have one or two drinks and still drive. So maybe that was the case, I don't know. So Lee was driving. Tracie claimed that they got involved in a road rage incident with a man in a dark Ford Sierra. She said that there had been some kind of altercation and he had started following them. She said that he was right behind, flashing his lights. Lee started to accelerate, and then somehow the car behind draws Lee to a halt. And Tracie said that both the men got out their cars, they had words, the man got back in his car while Lee was still standing there, and then the passenger of the car that was following him gets out. She described him as a fat man with staring eyes. That was her description. Apparently goes up to Lee, attacks him in a way that Tracie doesn't quite see. So she said she then of course leapt to Lee's defence, as she's not the kind of girl to just sit there and let her partner be attacked. She said she got smacked by the driver. She repeatedly got back up and kept getting knocked down again. She said it all got a bit hairy from that point, but then when she sort of comes to, Lee was there, covered in blood, and she was cradling him, and then it goes all vague after that. That was her explanation of what happened after they left the pub.
Okay.
So Lee's car had been right outside a house called Keeper's Cottage. So the commotion in the road had alerted one of the residents that lived there. The guy made his way down the path to the road, and there he seen in what was like poor light, because it was awfully dark. It was in December, so very dark at that time. He said the poor light that a woman was standing with her back to the car. He said there was a body on the floor, and he instantly ran back to the house, shouting, "Call the police, call an ambulance," to whoever was still in the house. So obviously the police were called, and the case was immediately given to a superintendent man called Superintendent Man.
Superintendent Man.
Totally got that one right. To a police officer who was Superintendent Ian Johnston. Totally didn't say that one right, did I?
But he was a man though.
Well, he was a man, yeah. But yeah, so sorry, Superintendent Ian Johnston. So obviously the police arrived at the scene, and there was Lee's car on the side of the road. Lee was lying on the ground, and Tracie at this point had actually went inside the keeper's cottage. She must have. I'm assuming they must have took her in and.
She just left him.
Yeah, just lying on the road. Yeah, which I thought, well.
Mm-hmm.
I personally wouldn't have left him on the road there, but hey ho. So Superintendent Ian Johnston noticed that Lee's car looked quite neatly parked. Because bear in mind, they're supposed to have been in a road rage incident, so you'd think if his car had suddenly come to a halt...
Yeah, it would have slammed on the brakes, and maybe it would have been skid marks or something like that.
But he noticed that it was quite neatly parked at the side of the road, like he'd actually pulled in nicely, basically. I said it didn't appear to have stopped in any great hurry.
Yeah.
So detectives spoke with Tracie to find out exactly what had happened. So of course Tracie relayed the story that I've just told you.
Yeah.
And said that Lee collapsed, and that's when the other vehicle had made its escape. So basically she said once he'd collapsed on the floor, the other vehicle
off they went.
So sadly, Lee Harvey was pronounced dead at the scene. It was clear that he'd been the victim of a savage, frenzied attack.
Yeah.
It was all done with a penknife. So reports varied of how many times he was actually stabbed, but one local report said it was 42 times that he'd been stabbed.
Wow, that's a lot.
So I don't know if that's 100% or not, but that's what it was claimed. Right.
Well, it must have been quite a lot for it to be a penknife.
Well, yeah, because the penknives,
they're quite small, aren't they? So.
Yeah, so you must have...
and they're calling it a frenzied attack, then it was obviously quite a lot of...
100%. I mean, which, it's obviously not just a stab. To me, it's like somebody's really been pissed off with you.
Yeah.
So he was stabbed, in the throat, his back, front, which had been done repeatedly, viciously and continuously. So the fatal stab wound which killed Lee was to one of his main arteries in his neck had been severed. So that's basically what ultimately killed him. So after Tracie's initial statement, Tracie, she was actually, she was battered and bruised, and she was whisked away in an ambulance. So she was taken to the hospital and treated for her injuries and obviously the shock, because she was in a bit of shock as well of what had happened. So of course the police, they launched a massive murder inquiry. So Tracie had told the police that the following car was a dark coloured Ford Sierra. It was a F registration plate. So the police, they started with the obvious route, which was to, do a vehicle inquiry with the DVLA, which for anybody who doesn't know what that is, that's like the driver's agency in the UK where you apply for your driving licence, your road tax, that
What does the V stand for? Drivers... Driving vehicle
licence association. I actually do not know what DVLA stands for. All these years.
That's so bad, eh? I just thought of that. I was like, we just know it as the DVLA.
Yeah.
I've never actually thought about what it actually stands for, but surely it must be drivers and vehicles licensing
association or something like that. I have to look that up now, but anyway. But yeah, so for anyone that doesn't know, it is basically where you you register your car, your road tax. That sort of thing. So obviously they contacted them for owner details that of course may help. That would fit the description of the car. But that didn't come to anything, I don't think. So the press, by this point had got wind, and they, descended on the area, as the idea of a road rage murder was going to be like a big, big story in their eyes. Like, they were, you know what press are like, they just...
If I recall rightly, around about that time, I'm sure that it was a bit of a thing. Like, road rage incidents. Like, not necessarily murders, but, I don't know, for some reason it's kind of jumping out, and that it was a thing, like, people being idiots, basically, and just racing each other, and...
Yeah.
I mean, I do remember in the 90s having a boyfriend who thought it was fun to... Oh, look, there's some young people in their car, let's challenge them to a race, and then the next thing would be, like... going for it around the coast road. I hate it.
There's still some of these people that do that to this day.
But yeah, I'm sure for a while, like, a road rage thing, it was kind of a thing. There was quite a lot of incidents and stuff. But well, why you would want to be doing that is beyond me.
No, I have no idea. But yeah, so the police, they knew that the best way to try and find the killer was an appeal through the media. So a press conference was arranged for the 3rd of December, so it was only a couple of days after the incident. So Superintendent Ian Johnston met with Tracie just before the press conference, because they'd obviously asked her if she was willing to do the press conference, because obviously, key witness, only person that's, witnessed what's happened, what better way to, have a press conference than somebody that actually knows details of what's
I'm just laughing because in my episode I was saying that was rare.
Yeah.
Actually, you said that's in my episode, but this episode is actually going to be published before that one.
Oh, is it?
So it's not really going to make much sense.
So but listens to this one.
In my episode, which will be next week,
you said it was rare.
I mentioned, well, it was, I think it was a police officer had said, when I was researching, had said that apparently it was quite rare to have a press conference when a witness at the actual crime scene.
Yeah.
But then I think it... But yeah, well, it said such a vicious one, but I suppose we're still talking murder, so I don't know. Maybe.
But anyway, So, like I say, the press conference was called. So Superintendent Ian Johnston had met with Tracie just before the press conference, just to make sure she was happy to do it, and she said, "Yeah, I really, really, really want to do it. I want to do this press conference." So of course that just ramped up the already massive media interest that the key witness was going to sit in front of them and answer questions. The press were like, "Oh yes, like this is."
So maybe it is quite a.
Yeah.
Maybe it is quite a rare thing if they show it.
Well, this was the 90s, and yours was what, 2000s and something?
2003, I think it was,
so, I mean, maybe there hadn't been many in between, because to be fair, I mean, apart from this one and that one, I don't think I have heard of many cases where...
I think most of the time when I've seen press conferences, there has been, like, missing people, Yeah,
so anyway, I say the media was just like, yes, this is going to be interesting.
Yeah.
So, so basically, because I said I saw the documentary where she comes in to the press conference, and I mean the cameras just start clicking away, like they just start going crazy, getting a picture of her as she walked into the room, and she looked every inch like a victim. She had 2 black eyes, she had a cut on her nose, she looked very distressed and upset, although it was noticed she did seem very comfortable in front of the camera and answering the questions as well, but I mean she was like her face looked a state, to be honest, and that was probably the picture that you've seen.
Yeah, I think she had black eyes.
With the black eyes and stuff, So she looked a bit of a mess, to be honest. So of course Tracie told the press what had happened, and I saw like most of the time when she spoke, like her eyes were kind of like to the ground. She sort of spoke with her, head sort of bowed a bit, eyes to the ground. But when she spoke about the alleged killer, her eyes sort of almost widened with anger. It was like she came alert, when she spoke about it. So like she'd kind of been looking down, answering the questions, head bowed a bit. But as soon as she started talking about the killer, her sort of head sort of came up, and she was... And
it was like her anger was coming out at the killer.
Yeah, but like her eyes just sort of widened, and I don't, it just was like, oh.
Did she look a bit scary?
Yeah, do you know what? The look in her eyes, I actually think it did look a bit scary. So
it just kind of sounds it the way that you're saying, especially with. Because as I said, like I've seen the picture of her, so I can picture what she looks like with black eyes and everything like that. And then, if she's got like an angry look in her eyes, I mean that photo looks a bit scary, to be honest. Like,
oh no, it does. So again, the cameras went crazy at this point because obviously she had looked up, more, so that there was loads of. I think there was quite a few pictures of her sort of at that moment.
Right.
So they just, like I say, went totally crazy. And then, and then once sort of that moment was passing, she started to appeal to the driver of the car to come forward and tell them, tell them who his mate was, because remember it's the passenger that's supposedly
He was the one that killed him.
Yeah, so she was like basically appealing to the driver, you know, come forward, tell us who your mate is, you know, and he wouldn't, as he wouldn't be in any trouble. And obviously there was a wee clip with Superintendent Ian Johnston there, and he was like, when I heard her say that, I just sort of looked at her to say, what? Of course he's going to be in trouble.
Yeah.
Like, he's basically aided and abetted a killer, you know. He's driven away from the crime scene. Yeah, obviously he's going to be in trouble. Like, she's not the police here.
She wouldn't have been authorised to say that.
Well, exactly. So he was kind of like,
wait a minute.
Yeah, like, why are you sort of saying that? So, and of course, you know, as the questions were coming, Tracie did start to contradict her story a bit. So, for example, the time that they left the pub, she had earlier told police it was 10:10, but in the press conference she said it was 10:10.
Right.
I get you could maybe mix things up, I suppose, but...
Yeah, but I think when it comes to... You know, when it comes to such a serious crime, then they have to pick up on things like that, you know, because they're looking for a murderer. So
yeah, and one of the actual main journalists that was there at the press conference, he actually said that, because obviously he was interviewed as well. He noticed that the superintendent Ian Johnston had, you know, react as well. He was like, you know, I saw him sort of react as if he turned his head towards Tracie, sort of assessing her. It was almost like he twigged. Something's not quite right here. Like, have you been looking at this in the wrong way, sort of thing, which is the way that it looked. And to be fair, the journalist said at that moment, he thought, something's going on here, like something doesn't feel quite right.
Yeah.
So the journalists, they were shocked at Tracie's inconsistencies. They actually, after the press conference, they all gathered outside on the steps. And I think one was asked, like, what do you think like's happened? Like, they were obviously talking amongst themselves. Someone's went, oh, you know, what do you think's happened? And he was like, I think she's done it. I think Tracie's done it. Which up until this point, nobody had suspected her, obviously, because they thought there was this road rage incident. And obviously the way that she was, I mean, but no, he was like, no, I think she's done it. And obviously, you know, was it conceivable that Tracie had been lying all along?
Now, she obviously wasn't being a very good actress, was she?
Well, exactly. So as the investigation continued, there was like new evidence to suggest that there was no road rage incident. Tracie went from being the only witness to the number one suspect in the murder of Lee Harvey. So obviously, let's say there was more evidence that were coming to light. So there was actually a child's witness statement who put Tracie's version in doubt. The child had been in the house that was nearby, the keeper's cottage.
Oh yeah.
And the child said that they could clearly hear a row going on. She said that she remembered that one was a male baritone voice, and the other voice was like much softer. She said it was much more like a woman's voice. And then forensic searches of the road had also discovered more clues of what really happened, because obviously, of course, they shut roads off and found bits and pieces. So they found a spring, it's like a metal spring, and another element from a penknife. But what police didn't find was any trace of a car overtaking another car. So there was no, because it was quite like a narrow country road. So I think they were basically saying, like, if a car had been like overtaking cars and stuff, there might have been, you know, they might have ended up on a bit on the grass verge, you were like the muddy embankment and stuff, or maybe like even just sort of.
There would have been some sort of indication.
Yeah, but there just didn't seem to be anything there, because sorry, I would say like this, you know, it was soft winter verges of a pretty narrow road, so police, you know, there would be some sign.
There would be.
Yeah, and police they also found a black beanie hat in the hedge next to where Lee's car had been parked. The police thought that could have belonged to the alleged attacker. So they sent it off to the lab for like DNA and hair testing, and it came back with cat hair, which was a black and white cat. Tracie had a black and white cat. So they took a sample from the cat, and that matched the sample on the hair. So it was accepted that it was Lee's hat. Right. And I can't remember how it had been found, but they said that it had been in Tracie's pocket, so it had obviously dropped out. But I don't know how that was linked. But anyway, it was Lee's hat. Right. So there was obviously another thing as well, is that obviously in Lee's hand, so obviously when they were examining him, he had a clump of Tracie's hair.
Okay. So why have you got why would you
got a clump in? Because basically, obviously, he must have had it like in his hand in a fist, and there was like a clump of hair, which what police officers said was probably like from defensive kind of
of course.
thing. So Tracie's explanation to that was, it must have been from when Lee was dying and he had his hand on her hair.
Okay,
now,
so...
I can understand if maybe there'd been a couple of strands, but
not a clump. Yeah, exactly.
I don't think you're going to have the...
You don't have the strength. And why would you be pulling a clump out? You know, if you've got a clump of hair in your hand, you've pulled that clump out.
Yeah.
Unless her hair is really badly falling out.
Yeah.
But, you know...
You've pulled it out.
You pulled it out, and if he's dying, there's no way he going to have pulled her hair out.
Yeah, exactly.
That's obviously a sign of a struggle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Pulling somebody's hair out, isn't it?
Exactly. So, I mean, her explanation...
That's what you do to women when you're having a fight. You pull it. That's why women always pull each other's hair.
Well, exactly, yeah.
Hit them where it hurts.
Exactly. So, I mean, he's, you know, if she's been the one to kill him, then he's obviously tried to defend himself and managed to cut a clump of her hair. So, you know, it was beginning to look more and more likely that Tracie had killed Lee. Mm-hmm. And probably in a fit of rage.
Right, yeah.
Knowing their
because she's got a bad temper.
Exactly. The police, obviously, they didn't think it was like a planned thing, but they think that she just totally exploded. Like a volcano, they said.
Right.
She erupted.
So they've been arguing and whatever, they've went out for a drink, that's obviously not helped matters, they've probably been arguing...
In the car, on the way
past. On the way back, and...
I don't know how, because that's the thing, I don't know how or why the car came to a stop. There's no explanation of why that happened. But it's obviously spilled out of the car, and then, you know, we know what's happened. Mm-hmm. So, it did seem like Tracie's guilty conscience was actually getting the better of her, as the day after the press conference, she actually tried to kill herself. She took an overdose, and there was like a psychologist person on there that thinks it was to take back control, like that was just her way of taking control. So she didn't really want to kill herself, she just wanted to... What are you taking control of, though? Well, exactly. I don't know if it's like maybe take control of like of the situation where she's sort of, I don't know, like... Maybe she's like being the grieving girlfriend, like, look, I can't live without... Yeah, oh my god, this is like my next case. There's similarities there, you'll know what I mean when you actually listen to the next case. But yeah, like... Yeah, like she's trying to kind of play herself as the victim still and control what the police and the media think about her. And kind of send him off her trail. Yeah, I think that's basically what was meant by that. So I don't think that was a market. Yeah, so I don't think she intended to kill herself. She just obviously... Yeah, it was just a ploy to kind of look like the grieving girlfriend. Exactly. So, obviously, in that aftermath, I mean, she was also in hospital, but of course more information, you know, came to light again. And this came from two people who had seen Lee's white Ford Escort they were at a junction. They had been driving sort of around the same area, and they said that obviously they must have been stopped at a junction and they've seen Lee's car drive past, and they said that they saw no car basically that fitted the description that Tracie gave, and that at the moment that they saw him, because obviously she sort of did explain like the route that they had taken and sort of where the road rages that sort of started. So obviously they knew the route basically. Yeah, because obviously it didn't just start right there. It would have had to have started further back. So Tracie had sort of given the description of the route that they had taken and the car when the car followed them. So the people at the junction basically had said that when they saw Lee's car, there was nobody following them. There was no car of that description. So that obviously put further doubt into the road rage incident, which I think by now... I wonder... Oh no, because it was like on a country road, wasn't it? I was going to say, because like, did they not have road cameras? Did it say if they had road cameras anywhere on that route? On the route? No. And I mean, because it was in 19... It was in the 90s. I mean, they probably had road cameras, but maybe just on sort of main roads. Not on country roads like that, because it was a proper like country road and like, you know... It was, like... we don't even have cameras on them now, do we? Well, we don't here. Do we? No, I don't think there is actually, to be fair, no. You wouldn't find, not sort of country roads like... I was just wondering about before they got there, but if there were... I suppose it depends what the area is like. Yeah, I mean, maybe like at traffic lights and stuff like that, I guess, because they have sort of cameras. But anyway, I mean, the witnesses of these two people was basically like... There was no evidence of another car. At the moment that we saw him, because I mean, his car was quite distinctive, because it was like a white Ford Escort, had like a spoiler in the back. It was one of those... Boy racer cars. Kind of looked a bit like that, yeah. So they said there was no... They didn't see any car chase them. So on the 7th of December, which was 6 days after Lee's murder, Tracie was actually arrested in the hospital. All right. She was still in the hospital. Oh, yeah, right, aye. Yeah, because remember she'd taken her overdose. So she was arrested in hospital and taken into custody. So again, more evidence started to come to light. So the clothes that she was wearing on the night of the murder, they were forensically tested. There was a pair of ankle zip-up boots And actually, 'cause I've seen the picture of it, so actually, like, inside, so, like, obviously, the zip down and, like, the inside of her boot, there was, like, sort of blood stains, but there was, like, a clear mark of where something, like, and what basically was, like, a penknife shape outline and blood that had been in her boot.
Oh, so she'd had the penknife in her boot, right?
So, so yeah, because it was, like, a sort of an impression of it, basically, was there. And it looked like the shape of the knife, so it was thought that she actually carried the knife away from the scene in her boot,
right? And
that as soon as she got to the hospital, she was able to dispose of it,
right?
So that's how the murder weapon was not found at the scene. She took it away, and I mean you can
see because they would have assumed that the person who committed the murder would have drove off with it.
Because they probably weren't looking for a murder weapon at the scene at that point, because they thought it had been a road rage incident.
And they would just, well, I mean, they still might have looked. I'm assuming they would have looked just in case the killer had thrown it, but they wouldn't have been looking at her.
Yeah.
They would have been
exactly.
thinking,
She was
there's no murder weapon, they must have drove off with it.
Yeah, exactly. And she was obviously, in a state herself, so she was taken to the hospital and everything. So, I mean,
sneaky.
Very sneaky.
So she had it in her boot.
Yeah, and then obviously you've seen her, did I have to write that? I might have wrote that later, but I'll tell you anyway. I'll carry on.
I like how you're so organised.
I know, because I just remembered another bit about her clothing, but I feel like I did write it down, but I clearly didn't write it at that point, so I'll carry on what I've written. If
you haven't, you can come back to it.
So Tracie was officially charged with the murder of Lee Harvey on the 19th of December 1996. So her trial was set for the following July, where she was going to plead not guilty, because Tracie was still sticking to her story at this point.
She was still denying it.
She was still denying it. She was still saying it was a road rage incident, wasn't me, I'm pleading not guilty.
So why'd you have a penknife in your boot?
Well, exactly. So, of course, the prosecution, they would have to prove that she was a liar, or else, potentially, she could walk away free.
God.
So the trial began on the 1st of July, 1997. Oh, see here, I did write it down.
All right, well done.
Her jumper was a...
Proud of you.
Yeah, because I thought, why didn't I write it there? But I mustn't have... I don't know.
Anyway, her jumper.
So yeah, her jumper was a key bit of evidence. And as, obviously, when you see it, it's basically covered in blood, her jumper. And she said that the blood had came from her comforting Lee when he was obviously dying.
That's understandable, that's what you would say.
Yeah, but an expert basically said that no, that couldn't be the case, because the way that it was like sprayed blood on her. So there was no way that
can check all this stuff.
Exactly, because apparently they said like when you stab somebody, like a lot of the bleeding can be done internally, so it doesn't necessarily come out of somebody when they're stabbed. But I think it must have been like the artery, that kind of sprays blood. Because I don't know if you've seen a lot of films, if you see when they get stabbed in the neck, the blood sprays.
I was just thinking. Oh, sorry. No. I was just thinking like maybe when you take the knife out, because if you're stabbing repeatedly, maybe it's like bleeding inside, but there's maybe spray coming out when you're taking the knife out, and I suppose it could.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Maybe I don't know.
Yeah, but like I say, I think a lot of it is sort of done internally with things. But this, because she'd caught him in the artery, that's had sprayed. So the way that the blood was on her jumper, they're like, well, no, that's like sprayed out. That's, that's
if that was from comfort, it would just be like a sort of big splodge. Like you'd be able to tell.
Yeah, exactly.
Of course.
So, that was quite key evidence that. So there was the one reporter who thought she had done it, because obviously I said he was interviewed quite a bit. So he actually did think that she had a good chance of getting away with it, because he was like, well, she's played herself the victim. I mean, the way that she was on the press conference with her face and stuff, she could get away with it.
I'm still waiting to find out why she's got black eyes.
Yeah.
Do we find out? Or did she do it herself? I'll just get on with it. Doesn't matter. Ignore me.
So Tracie, she herself took to the stand on the 14th of July to give her testimony. She came across as calm and somewhat quite convincing of her story, which I think that's where the journalist was... it was going to be like a make or a break, I think, whether she took the stand, but let's say she did. But of course she was cross-examined over... It was like quite a few days she was cross-examined over, and the prosecution just tore her account apart bit by bit, because obviously the prosecutor man was on the documentary, I don't know what to call him.
Prosecutor man. Prosecution.
Yeah, he was on the documentary, and he was basically like, the best way to do it was just to sort of dissect like every little detail bit by bit, and just sort of just destroy every little bit of her story,
right?
And that would like basically make her crack. So that was his way of doing it, basically.
Yeah.
He was like, that's how I managed to sort of, that's how I managed to basically, well, make her crumble, I guess.
Do you know, just while you're having a pause there and you're trying to... I'm just thinking how unprofessional our podcast is. The prosecution man. In my next episode, you'll hear us like totally fumbling about at the end of the episode, about what our social media names are and stuff like that. And
yeah, but we're really...
You were just taking a big pause there, so I just thought I'd fill it.
Do you know why it is? It's because sometimes like I start saying stuff and then I realise I've actually written it down in the next like couple of sentences.
Right.
So, but because I've just thought of it in my head and I'm going off the cuff, and I'm like, oh, but I've just written it down, so then I feel like I'm going to sound stupid by saying it again.
I just
So
stuck my nail
that's
on
where
that.
I get lost, rather than just reading what I've written.
I just thought you couldn't read your writing.
No, I could read it. I just had already said what I said, because I basically said it was done piece by piece. And eventually she was standing there answering, I don't know, I can't remember. So her credibility was just diminished bit by bit.
Right.
So on the 29th of July, in an unprecedented move, Tracie agreed to be interviewed by a newspaper journalist as the jury retired to make a decision on her fate, which...
Are you allowed to do that?
Well, I said it was unprecedented, so clearly it never happened before, but I guess there's no reason why... I don't know if there's a law to stop them, because technically she's been charged, isn't she? So she's kind of...
Yeah, but I just didn't think anybody would be allowed to speak to papers while there's a court case going on, no matter who it is.
I didn't think so, but she did.
Right, okay, fair enough.
So she met with a journalist in a private room, actually at the court.
Right.
So bear in mind, this is when the jury have retired to make their verdict on her. She's agreed to do an interview. So the
maybe she was allowed to then, because everything's been said basically, and it's just, the court case is basically done. It's just them retiring. So maybe you're allowed to by then.
So no, but the journalist himself said it was just totally bizarre,
right?
And he'd never done that before, and he's never done it again.
Okay.
So it was just for him personally anyway. That was just a once in a lifetime thing.
Okay.
So I don't know how he even thought to ask or to try and do that. There was no explanation of that, so I don't know what made him think.
She maybe hasn't, maybe sort of asked her at an earlier point, and then it's her that's kind of approached him and said, right, I'm ready to talk.
Yeah, maybe. So, he started asking her questions, and the basic message she was given was, I didn't do it, I'm innocent, and I love him till the day I die. That's basically what she was saying. Okay. From the questions that he was asking.
I'm not convinced by that, but okay.
No. So after about 20 minutes, where the journalist was like, okay, this is coming at the end of the interview, like there's not much more.
Is this the journalist that
thought she did it?
Yeah,
same guy. So yeah, he was kind of like starting to think about wrapping it up anyway, because he obviously wasn't getting any further with what he was asking.
Right.
So there was like a tannoy announcement, and it was to basically say all parties to court 9. So basically a jury had made a verdict.
Yeah.
So the jury returned a guilty verdict. She didn't flinch. She just had her head bowed. There was no reaction from her.
Okay.
So she was given a life sentence to serve a minimum of 14 years.
That's good.
And in April 1999, she actually did finally admit her story about the road rage had been completely made up.
Surprise, surprise.
She confessed in a letter to her lawyer that she had killed Lee, but she said it was self-defence. So going back to where you said about her black eyes, I'm assuming there must have been a fight.
So right.
Whether she killed him in self-defence, I don't know if that's true.
Yeah.
But clearly he must have hit her.
Right.
Because there was no definitive explanation of how she got her injuries. But it must have been.
Might explain why he had her hair in his hand as well.
Well, exactly, because they'd obviously had a fight.
Yeah,
so I'm assuming it must have come from him. There's nothing.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
But it's what it sounds like.
Because I was like, surely she couldn't have done that. She could have done it herself, but.
Yeah, but
the
black eyes.
That hard?
Exactly, because the black eyes she had. She looked. Her face was a mess. Yeah. To be honest, so
it does sound like they have had a fight then. So maybe they've been arguing in the car, and that's why he's pulled over to the side. So right, okay, and like
they've ended up outside the car.
Yeah, and they've had a physical fight, and she's ended up stabbing him, whether or not it was self-defence or maybe just in a fit of rage. She's just done it to.
Yeah, but then to be fair, to stab someone 42 times.
That's a bit overkill.
It is a bit overkill.
Yeah.
So after serving her 14 years, Tracie was released from prison in order to not go within 5 miles of Lee Harvey's family. And just as a wee side note, don't know if you've ever heard of the band Catatonia and their song Road Rage.
Oh, is that?
Apparently that was inspired by Tracie Andrews.
Wow. It's all over the
front
front page. We really shouldn't be singing. You give me
Road Rage. Yeah.
Oh, I never knew that.
Yeah,
There you go, a little bit of trivia.
Yeah, totally. But I think Lee's family, they weren't happy about that at all. Because they were basically saying that they were profiting
on his death. Yeah.
So I don't think they were particularly happy about it, which I can understand, because I don't think I would be too impressed if a famous band made up a song about my son's murder.
And I'm just thinking, like, the song is, and I can't really remember the lyrics, but I'm just thinking, but that song's kind of about her, the fact that she did it. So is that not kind of glorifying her?
Well, but yeah, I mean, there was a bit...
I don't think it's a very good taste, is it? Really, no matter what.
No. Honestly, I know Lee's family weren't particularly happy.
I like that song. Well, I like that song as well, but
I know, because I was like that song, and until this moment I didn't realise that there was a connection there. So
I find that really random though. Like, it's really strange that, I mean, I know people, like songwriters, maybe write about feelings and emotions and things that have happened in their lives, but to write about some stranger's murder.
But then it's not the first time, is it?
Well, no. There's, I mean, we know that there's the
I Don't Like Mondays.
I Don't Like Mondays. And there's probably other ones as well that we don't know about. But yeah, it just doesn't seem very in very good taste, does it, to do that?
So I'm not sure I would actually listen to it in the same way again if I heard the song, because it just, now that I know the meaning or the inspiration behind it, if you want to
kind of went off that song now, I think.
Yeah, but there you go. So yeah, so basically, there was no road rage.
She just killed him.
She killed him, and...
But yeah, I'm leaning towards it not being self-defence. I'm leaning to it being a physical fight. But she's went overkill. Yeah. I don't, because as you said, if it was self-defence, I think she would only have to stab, if she had this knife, stab him a couple of times just to kind of to give him a fright, to get him to stop.
Because you think it would hurt him.
Yeah.
And he would stop.
But then again, like, in cases that we've done before, it's said that, like, a lot of time people don't realise that they've been stabbed, it just feels like a punch.
Yeah, that's true.
So he could not realise that he was being stabbed.
Yeah, that's true. I mean...
Nobody's ever going to know, because it was only the two of them that were there.
Exactly.
Well, nobody's going to know whether she's telling the truth or not.
Exactly. But the fact is, we do know she did.
She did it, yeah.
She did it. There was no road rage. And obviously she was... I mean, she'll be obviously out now. Of course, as I said, she's out and God knows, living her life now, but...
Oh well. Well, thank you to everybody for listening. If you'd like to follow us on social media, we're on Twitter and Instagram at crime_divers_pod. Our email is
crime_divers_pod@outlook.com.
Our TikTok is CrimeDivers, all one word, and a space, and podcast.
And our YouTube is CrimeDivers Podcast.
Is that not what I just said?
Did you say TikTok?
Oh, did I?
Yeah. So yeah. So
no, but TikTok's all one word. I got it wrong.
So YouTube is CrimeDivers Podcast. Podcast, separate word. Honestly,
TikTok is CrimeDivers Podcast.
Honestly, we are awful.
If you'd like to buy us a coffee.
Nobody wants to buy us a coffee.
They have in the past. It's buymeacoffee.com.
Even just take pay on us.
Slash what's it? CrimeDivers.
Seriously. Like, can we just wrap this up?
If you'd like to join our Patreon, it's patreon.com/CrimeDivers.
And
didn't bother even leaving us a review about this episode or the next one.
We're clearly awful.
Yeah, just subscribe though.
Yeah, don't forget to subscribe. Please rate and review us, but be kind. And we'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.